Okay, gentlemen. Okay, I don't know whether it's after Tisha B'Av, everybody goes with Dacha. It's more difficult. I'm also out of town now, in the place where I am. I just ran into someone. One of the students said he's going to catch the recordings. I see him over there in the dining room. But the kid said we have to move on. So hopefully there'll be more people online later. Just to throw out the question now, and then maybe before the break, if somebody can remind me to discuss it, the calendar, because this is, as you see, Shiur number 14. So today, Be'ezus Hashem, we're going to finish off Siman Tzaddik and the missing Sif, the mystery Sif from Siman Tzaddik Dalet, Sif Hey. And then the Shiur 15 is Tzaddik Vav, Vav Charif, and then 16 is the last Shiur of this, is Siman Tzaddik Zayin. And then, so basically that's the last three Wednesdays in Chodesh Menachem Av. And then the first three Wednesdays of Elul will be Chazara. So do 3 Chazara Shiurim. And the goal is to make a Faher before Rosh Hashanah. The Shaila is exactly when and how, and whether everybody is needs some sort of consensus. Maybe that'll have to happen online, or whether the Wednesday before Rosh Hashanah is shaykh to people, or people are too busy. Whatever the case is, seems to be the only viable option now in order to be able to do this. Hopefully I'll be able to keep on schedule and do the shiurim in time. Okay, so what I'd like to do first, before going further, Siman Tzaddik is all about Nat Bar Nat. It's all in of Nat Bar Nat, and sort of parenthetically, we had a sif on Nat Bar Nat in Tzaddik Dalet, so it makes sense thematically to learn first all the klolim of Nat Bar Nat and get that clear, and then you can understand what's going on with Siman Tzaddik Dalet, because it's until you learn the klolim, you can't really understand what the Mefarshim are speaking about and what exactly is the issue. So what I would like to do first is Poshet read Mechaber Ramah and do a short Chazara on the dinim that we know so far from Nat Bar Nat, which is the Indian, just to keep it clear. Sometimes just a few words from the Gemara helps keep you oriented regarding what we're talking about. A few words from the Gemara, a few words from the Mechaber, a Segula, Poshet to get things clear. What it is, the subject that's being discussed. So the subject we're talking about is Dogim Sha'ala Bakaira. Dogim Sha'ala Bakaira. So the Dogim, Bakaira Shal Bosor, Mutal Lechel Bakutach. So what happened? It's not Bar Nat, because it's somehow there was a Fleshka Keli here. So the taste of the meat went into the Keli. That's the first nascent tam. And then the taste went from the Keli into the Dogim. So it's not Bar Nat, because it's already a second taste, and it's not Bar Nat that Teira. Okay, so the Gemara says clearly not Bar Nat that Teira is mutter. Now the lashon of the Gemara, as we said, Dogim Sha'olu Bakaira. So you just remember 3 words. You have many of them main dinim of not Bar Nat, because it's a lashon shal b'diavad, because they're telling you a story. Dogim Sha'olu Bakaira. What happened is that the Dogim were all Bakaira, and then the din is you're allowed to eat it with kutach. And the question is, what does it mean, Dogim Shala Bakaira? So if you remember, we were Machlekes. Is it talking only about the simplest case that you took it from the fire and then you put it on a plate? And that's what it means, Ola Bakaira? Or does it mean even if it was cooked with liquid in a fleshka pot? And furthermore, does it mean even that it was broiled on a fleshka keli, like a fleshka spit or something like that? And what's the difference? Although it's debatable where there's a difference between bishul and sli, but as we see that there are opinions that say that it's different, because when it's sli, it's only not Bar Nat 2 nice tams, because it's one time, let's say it's a barbecue grill. So it's a fleishika barbecue grill. So one time the meat went into the grill, and then it goes straight into the fish. There's nothing in between. Mashenkin, if it's bishul and it's been cooked in water, so you're boiling the fish. So then the taste goes first into the pot, and then from the pot into the water, and then from the water into the fish. So there's a case that could be made to say there's 3 knots. As we discussed before, well, it could be the fish is sitting on the bottom of the pot or touched the side of the pot, and therefore it was belay straight from it, so there's really no difference. It's also two nascent tam. But in any case, that's a machlekes. Which case are we talking about? So those that are machmer and say the only case it's going to be mutter b'di'evet is all b'kaida that it was in a plate or something of the nature. But if it was cooked or roasted, then it's no good. Then there are those that say, and the machaber paskins like this, and that says both bishul and sli are also good. It's also called dog and shol b'kaida that it's b'di'evet mutter. And that's machlekes machaber Ramah. So the Ramah writes it at the end of Sif, after Sif base. But both Aleph and base are this case of dogim shal b'kaida. One's a case with a fish and one's a case with an egg. But Pasha is to split up into a separate halacha because it wants to tell you that the eggshells are porous and it's not barnat, and therefore you cook in the kedera shel bosor. It's not barnat. Sorry to say not barnat. It isn't not barnat. Okay. So good. So let's just read quickly through Machaber Ramah. And this will, I think, be a good review, and it will also help us. I was only going to do a review at the end of the Shiur, so this will break it into some pieces here. So Simon Tzadik Aleph, Dogm Beitish and Isbashal Begedera Shel Bosor and Mutter Lochem in Kvina. Fine. Sip Aleph, Dogm Shin Isbashal Lo Nitzlo Begedera Shel Bosor. So again, you see right away that the Machaber, the Paskins, Lokula, that the din of Dogm Moshel Bekaida is even if it was cooked and even if it was roasted, as long as it's a Rechutza Yavashem Shum Shum and Dabik Ba, as long as you don't have to worry about mamashas of basar that's floating around over there, you're allowed to eat it with milchiks. Mishum dehavi not barnat, nice and tam that teira. Fine. Not he passes not barnat, but in all of these 3 cases. Let's say it wasn't well washed, and you have little pieces of shuman, whatever. There's grease. So then, if it's not batal b'shishim, the fleishika remainder, so then you're not allowed to eat it with the fish with kutach because it's fleishika fish. When it's not talking about the issue of sakana, it's another issue. It's base.
This is all b'di'evet.
Yeah, dogim shen nis bashlu o shen nitzlu. Yeah, so we're going to talk about at what point of b'di'evet it is. In other words, there's different stages of what you could define as b'di'evet. So when you put it into the pot, having in mind that you want to eat it with kutach, so that's even according to the Machaber, who is Mekel, it's also a problem because it's a lashon shel b'di'evet. He doesn't allow you to do this lechatchila. Now, if it was already cooked in the pot, so now are you allowed to eat it with kutach? So according to the lashon over here, that once it was already cooked, then that's already called b'di'evet. Okay, there's a more strict definition of b'di'evet than that we would say, we'll soon see in Ramah, that even though it was already cooked, that doesn't mean you can eat it with milchiks. What's b'di'evet is after it was already mixed up with the milchiks. So if you cook macaroni in a fleishka pot, a ben yemei, was clean, so it's not barnat. It's not barnat latera. Yeah, because it's part of a pasta. Okay, then you say, okay, now we're going to put some cheese on top of it. So wait a second, it was a cooked in a fleishka pot. The person said, what are you talking about? Not barnat latera. So you say b'di'evet mutter. It was already it was already cooked. No, but the Ramah says that's not b'di'evet. B'di'evet is after it was mixed. Okay, then it's a different story. Anyway, we'll soon see in the Ramah. So if you have an egg that was cooked in milk kapat, same thing the opposite way. So now this egg is a not barnat dairy because the milk went into the pot and the taste when the pot went into the egg. So it's not barnat that teira. And he says you can put it into the tarnagelis. I feel lachatchila. Okay, but again, he still doesn't allow you to put it in the milk kapat in order to put it inside the chicken. Once it was cooked inside of chicken, then just like it was you're allowed to eat the dogim with kutach, mutal la'achla b'kutach. That's also lechatchila. It's not a chiddush in that part. But it was cooked in the same pot as bosor. We don't say it's not barnat because it had to go through. Let's say, for argument's sake, you had a stainless steel closed keli, hermetically sealed keli, and you put it inside the kedera shel bosor. So then there would be a case to say it's not barnat. You could argue about that, but then at least had to go through the keli in order to get inside. Like we said before, it falls on the kisu, it falls the negara reitev, might be different, but in any case, it certainly has to go through a keli, and he's telling you over here that the eggshell is not considered to be a keli. It's porous, as the Rashba says. Fine. That is the mechaber that not barnat, the teira, your mutter lachol b'kutach, just like the Gemara says. And the chiddush is the way he defines the lenient definition of dogim shol b'kayr. Along comes the Ramah, says, wait. The Rashi's son-in-law didn't define it like that. The name of Rashi, v'yesh machmir b'tzliu bishul. No, the Rivan says no. It's only talking about dogim shol b'kayr. You put it into a plate or a bowl. But if it was cooked or roasted, lesser neisen tam bar neisen tam. Not barnat is also. The yesh machmirim. Now what do? You got a machlekes rishonim, but minig lesser lechatchila b'diavad mutar b'cholin. So therefore, you should be machmel lechatchila, and therefore do what? What's called the lechatchila over here? Lechatchila doesn't mean to cook it in the pot. Lechatchila, even the machaber, but pashtus the machaber holds you're not allowed to put it in the pot. I mentioned briefly that there is someone, there's one of the poskim wants to bring a tzadiuk that maybe the mechaber does hold it even with lechatchila, but pashtus all the poskim say that even that lechatchila to put it in the pot in order to eat the pasta with the cheese, that even the mechaber says you're not allowed to do. So what's the pshat? Lesser lechatchila, you're not allowed to eat it with kutach, and you're not allowed to put the egg inside the tarnagelis. What's b'diavad? After it was already mixed up the macaroni and cheese, and after you already put the egg inside the chicken. So then it's mutter. Then we'll paskin like the other rishonim. Clear? Fine. Now that Ramah says, this is review. We learned this last week, but I think it's going to help us to get this straight. It's worth the time. But that's, you're not allowed to eat it with lechatchila with the other min, to have the fish with the chalav or the egg with the bosor. You can put it in another keli. In other words, this egg that was cooked in a milk kapat, you can eat it in a fleshika bowl. Not banat lateri. Even the Ramah says that's okay. And then and the dogam shol b'kayr shel bosor. So they're fleshik. If you want to eat the fish in a milk plate, you can eat a milk plate. You're not allowed to eat it with milk. Can't eat it with kutach, but you can put it in a milk plate. The Ramah allows this. One of the reasons, I just give you a hint here, one of the reasons that I'm going over this is not just because it's good to get it straight, but also you need to go back to Tzadik Dalit, because Tzadik Dalit throws upside down so many things here. It's good to get clear, get your bearings on reality. What is the basic din of not barnat? Okay, so even the Ramah, who asks lechatchila, he even said, but lechatchila to put in the keli, that's okay. Keinim l'nisbash l'nitzlo tchila rak all the bakeli shel bosor. Yeah, mutalachim chalav. And so too, if it wasn't cooked or roasted, it was only olive in the keli. So good. So then of course you can eat it with kutach. The Gemara says that. I was not arguing with the Gemara. The other Rishonim don't argue with the Gemara. The Yesh Machmirim don't argue. I can't argue with the Gemara. It says the Gemara means something. So what does it mean? So they say it only talks about that it was put into a keli, it wasn't cooked. Yeah, so the same thing applies backwards also. Yeah. So too, if it was Nason Tam Lefgam, it wasn't used in the last 24 hours. So then also lechatchila. So if that fleshika pat that the pasta was cooked in was the Eina Ben Yemei, So then you have not barnat with Eina ben Yemis, and the Rama says, okay, fine, not barnat Eina ben Yemis. So then you can eat it with kutach lechatchila. Again, even here he doesn't say you're allowed to do it lechatchila, to cook it in the Eina ben Yemis pot, flesh kapat, in order to make macaroni and cheese out of it in your bowl. And that also doesn't say. But if it was already cooked, then it's not only not barnat, but it's Eina ben Yemis. So then there's yesh machmirim and not macham. And then the Rama finishes, and it doesn't apply if it's a dover charif, and that's not really some nagel in Yanena. We'll be talking about that more in Sadik Bov. Clear? I don't hear anything, so I guess that's clear. Okay. Now along comes Siv Gimel, and what does Siv Gimel add to the picture? Because now you're not putting a food inside the keli, you have kalim inside kalim. That's Siv Gimel. Siv Gimel, Kaira Shel Bosor. I hope you forgive the not fancy print over here, but I just want to get clear. Machaberama, Kaira Shel Bosor, and I'm not giving you the final hachra of the Shach and Taz either now, but just basic, get straight Machaberama. Kaira Shel Bosor shehot chabayera chaleves b'chamin sheyatz ledis b'ha. So you have a milchik pot, you cooked up water, and somebody wanted to wash the milchik dishes in this big milchik pot, okay, which the way they washed the dishes with hot water in those days, the hot water was do it yourself. You wanted hot water, heat up the water. So you heat it up in a milchik pot. It was the plan to wash in the milchik dishes. And what happened? And somebody put fleshka dishes inside. Okay, so now you have a milchik keli. And you have now fleshka keli. I feel shneim b'nei yeman, mutter. Says the Mechaber that even if they're both a ben yemei, it's mutter, and it's obviously even if there's no shishim. Why? Okay, why is it not barnat latera? So let's think. So how did this milchik kapat affect the fleshka kelim? So the milk. The first time around, how did the pot get milchik? The milk went from the milk into the pot. Okay, that's number one. Then you cleaned out the pot, you filled it up with water to wash the dishes. So then the taste went from the pot into the water. That's taste number two. Not that data. Good. So that milchik taste that's floating around in the water is not latera. Right? Okay. Now you took a kaira shel bosor, and you took this fleshka bowl. So how did the fleshka bowl go fleshka? Because the taste of the meat went into the kaira. Number one. Then the taste of from the kaira, when you put it into this yera chaleves, it went into the water, the yera chaleves. So the water is also part of the water. Yes, so it's not banat that data. There's time already. You heated up the water from the fleshka, so there's tam chalev there. Yeah, but that tam is not really tam. It's not banat that data. So Machaber, because remember the Machaber L'Shitose, he holds that this is not a problem here. It's not that data, even if it's special, not a problem. Okay, so you have tam basar, tam cholav, floating around in this water over here, and the Machaber says not a problem. Everything's kosher. Why is that? Everything's kosher because not that data. Okay, that's only if there's no mamash. It's vusham or barley shalehaya shum and dabik b'hem. You have to be sure. It's different from the other case because over there, we assume that before you cook food in the pot, you clean the pot first. Over here, it's dirty dishes, so we assume that the dishes have some mamashas on it. So, and even the milchika one, if you're using it to wash dishes, so you have to make it clean in order to wash mutzuka milchika dishes in it, not necessarily. So there might be leftover remnants of food in both of them. So you have to be sure for this dinner, not to apply. Not it does not apply to mamashas. So you have to make sure that there ain't shum dabak ben. There's no grease stuck to it. If there's fleshka grease on it, you have to make sure there's enough water to be mavatal b'shishim. Okay. Long arms that go. So wait a second. She's sefer atrumas. The yesha aisram afil ain't shum dabak ben. That's a problem. And why is it a problem? So we explained the two reasons before. What are the two reasons? L'chor is not banat latera. because we're worried about two possibilities. First of all, we're worried that maybe this Kaidish or Bosor touched the wall of the Yerech HaLevis and absorbed directly, and then it was not Barnat Latera. Why? Because the taste of the milk went into the pot, into the Yerech HaLevis. And then the taste of the Yerech HaLevis, if the Kaidish or Bosor touched the wall, so it didn't go into the water first, which would be not Barnat Latera. It went into the Fleishik Keli. That's not Barnat Latera. It's not Barnat, but it's not Barnat Lisura. I mean, we said this before. It's obvious, but it bears saying. Just you don't lose your bearings. Somebody cooked cholent in a milk kapad. It's also not Barnat, but it's not Barnat Isura, because the taste of the milk went into the pot. Now the taste from the pot went into the flesh. So that's not Barnat Latera. That's not Barnat Isura. So that's for sure Aser. That's Issa Deraisa. Not Barnat is not the thing in and of itself, has to be Latera. Okay? So therefore, over here it's going, if it touched the wall of the pot, so it'll go straight in without an intermediary, it's not Barnat Isura. And so to the other reasons given the Shainim, it's brought down by the Shachan Taz, that the taste, when it's there in the water, you can have it direct. That taste is floating around over there. So who said that the taste itself didn't meet directly? And then it's also not Barnat Isura.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Sif Aleph and Bays, we're talking about something that's not milk or meat, and it's an actual tafshil. Here we're talking about it's just kalim that are actual flesh and actual milk, but they're just in a different medium.
Correct. That's the difference between Sif Aleph and Beis talking about the same thing, but Sif Gimel talking about something different.
Right.
Okay, that's why we need another svara. No,
I'm just saying it just hit me. That we're mamash at a whole different level.
That's exactly why I'm going over it, because we need another svara. The Ramah's chumrah from Sif Aleph Beis of the Rivan is not going to answer this. You understand? I think you can say it's not Barnat, but even then, b'di'evet it's mutter. Over here, he's answering it even b'di'evet. The Ramah, because we're worried this other svara that it's not Barnat. In other words, we have a machlek when somebody's not Barnat Tatera. What are we going to call not Barnat Tatera? Yeah, that's the machlek is in the Gemara. What's the din of not Barnat? Okay, whether it's also a mutter. Okay, but over here he's saying it's not Barnat Tatera. It's not that data. We have to worry that it's Lisura. So what there must be a machma. Okay, if one of them was not a ben Yemen, not a ben Yemen, blias klirishin, wasn't using a klirishin, but it's called a kelim motorim. So then all the kelim, if it's ain't a ben Yemen, everything's mutter. Talk about this muscle. In the water, it's not called b'di'evet. Water is not something of such value that we're going to have to be mapped to the water. That you go, where other water? Who says you have to use this water? See, answer the water. If it was be a food, lavdafka, we would say such a thing. Yeah, and this case could very easily happen. You know, who says this has to be? This simon, in case you didn't notice, and it's going to be all the way to the end of today's shiur. These are like some of the most common things that happen in a kitchen. You know, there's a milchika pot that's cooking up pasta, it's cooking macaroni. Somebody takes a fleishka spoon, takes some of it out. Yeah, somebody made a tea in a milchika cup, and then somebody put in a spoon. This is the same din. It doesn't have to be water. It doesn't have to be gekashet. It's the same question. You have kalim of two opposite origins, one basa, one cholav, and then you have a parva medium in the middle. What's the din? This is all of these cases. They happen all the time. Very, very common. So the Ramah says, as long as one of them was not a ben Yemi, that's why. What's the first question? I mean, the first question, somebody asks a shayla like this. This happens all the time. So yes, but was it hot? And the question after that is if the person understands what a ben Yemi is, then you ask him, was it a ben Yemi? Was the milchik a ben Yemi? Was the fleishik a ben Yemi? Okay, Avalim Shneim b'nei Yemen v'dich b'hem b'yach b'klirish hakoloser. V'hachi neigim ein l'shanis gendikt. Ramah asks even b'di'evet. Okay, and then the Ramah goes on. We're going to learn the rest of this later on today's shiur. What's with a klisheni? What's with the iri klirishin, and so on and so forth. So to
Quick
make a
question.
summary, what we learned
Ask-
so far, yeah.
Can I ask a quick question?
ahead.
Are we worried that the two pots are touching each other and being Berel one from another?
The two Kalim, yeah. So that was one of the svaras that was brought by the Rishonim, and that would really be a part of the whole discussion. Does the Ramah allow not bar not? Let's say there's three. Is he only being machmir because he's worried maybe there's two, or is he going to be matat? That ends up being machleg shachatas.
Because
And I pointed out to you last week from the Alter Rebbe what the Alter Rebbe said about that, the difference in Eichel and Kalim. We're going to come back to that today.
Okay.
Also, we're gonna come back to that. Okay, but that if you remember, we brought a raya. I mean, this I'm giving you now. This is all Chazara. We're gonna go back to Tzadik Dalet. I just want you to understand Tzadik Dalet. Unfortunately, some other things are gonna have to, run through more quickly. But I think it's important to get it straight, and then you'll understand more fundamentally what it is that's going on here. If you remember from last week, that the nafkamina between those two reasons is what happens if they're shishim. Because if the problem is that you're worried about the tastes mingling in the water and they're going to come together, it's going to be napanat leisura. So then if they're bittul b'shishim, it's finished. Everything is bottled in the water. Okay, there's the only problem if it's not bittul b'shishim. So bittul b'shishim, according to that reason, will work. But if you're worried about the keli touching directly, what does it help you bittul b'shishim? And you see back over there in Sagdal, you see that Ramah is going to say that shishim works. Okay, so shishim works. That's what he takes as the iker tam. So we have a little chart over here to help us review. So you have over here the different definitions. What does it mean? Dogm shola b'kaira. We have halal meichel parva reseich b'kli b'sori, which everybody agrees that is covered within the Gemara's definition of dogm shola b'kaira. Then you have bishul, and then you have tzli. That although the mechaber says all three of these are included in the definition of ola b'kaira. Okay, there are those, specifically the mashal, who the Shach quotes, that says tzliya is more strict. And then we have the case, bishul b'tzliya, Michael Parv, b'kli b'zor she'ena ben yemi. Let's say it's not a ben yemi. And then we have our three stages over here between lechatchila and b'diavad. So first of all, are you allowed to put it in the pot lechatchila? Can you put the pasta in the fleishiga pot al manas lechol b'cholav? That would be lechatchila. Now, let's say you didn't do it on purpose. You found out later that it was a fleishiga pot. Now, what's b'diavad, b'kli b'sori? Are you allowed lechol b'cholav, which is one level of b'diavad, which the Ramah is calling lechatchila, because it's the whole lashon, the Shulchan Aruch, is the lashon that you didn't do the first one. You didn't do it on purpose. The dogm shola b'kairos, the Gemara's lashon should be the. But now it says mutar lachon b'chalav. That means lechatchila you let it with chalav. Then we have another level of b'diavad shekavari sarabim chalav. What happens if it's already after it got mixed with you already put the cheese into the macaroni? So what's the din? Okay, lechatchila in general it's accepted. Everything is also even the case of Ola Bakairo without any bishul, without any tzli, that to do this lechatchila is you're not allowed, even according to the Mechaber. Everybody agrees this. Now, what about the case that it was already put there? So now, if you remember, the Ramah said lechatchila aser, and b'diavad mutter. But what did the Ramah mean? Lechatchila aser is talking about this case. Are you allowed to eat it with kutach? So the Gemara says it's okay. So good. So this case is okay. The dogm shola b'kaira. So that the Ramah agrees with that you're allowed to eat. It says in the Gemara mutach b'kutach. And so to the case of Zaina ben Yemei, the Ramah, we just read the Ramah. The Ramah said it's also okay if it's Zaina ben Yemei. But these cases over here, that's the machlek is mechaber Ramah. According to the Shulchan Aruch, according to mechaber, it's mutter. Both these cases, and according to Ramah, both these cases are aser. And that's what the Ramah meant when he said lechatchila aser b'diavad mutter. And that's why you have over here b'diavad mutter. Once it was already mixed with the cheese, then it's b'diavad mutter. The only thing is the Shach brings down the Rashal that tzli he asers. And the way the Shach quotes the Mashal, looks like he's passing like that. So therefore, it ends up being a pretty much an endorsement of this opinion. Okay, and then we have b'diavad. Can you put it in the other keli? So those that Ramah says you can take this pasta that was cooked in the fleshka pat or the dogim the special bakairas, and you can put it in a milchik plate to eat. Not with milk, but you can put it in a milchik plate, not a problem. Okay, this was all review. Clear? We took a lot of time for this review, but I think it's worth it because then the next piece is going to go much easier. Because now we'll go back to Tzadik Daled Sif Hey. Now, if you remember, the whole Tzadik Daled, the whole Sim Tzadik Daled, it was talking about Tichnas and Nevela, we're talking about different, the kaf, all about a kaf. And the emphasis, don't come to the Gemara, the whole Simon is basically from the smak. The smak, the Sefer Mitzvot, the smag was much longer. The smag is the one quoted on every page of the Gemara, because he was based on the Rambam, but he was the one that Rebbe said that he went to Spain to go put on tefillin, and people lined up. That's the smak. The smak was later, and he made a kitzur of everything, and he brought down his Rebbe was I believe Rabbi Chilmi Parish. He was the one that wanted to ring Korban Pesach. Zman Hazeh. Anyway, so a case came to him. What was the case? This was the case. So how many of the details of this case are bedafka? So I mentioned before the Trumas Adeshin, he wrote the Shailas, the Shach says. So therefore, every detail he picked in order to say the halacha. But over here, we're not 100% sure because he's just telling, this is what happened. I'll tell you a story. This Shaila came to my teacher, and this is what he said. So what happened here? Okay. If somebody cooked up water in a brand new pot, not milchik, not fleshik, brand new parva pot. And you put inside a milchika spoon. Okay. So far, what do we have? We have a parva pot. So it has no tam at all, right? We got a milchika spoon. So we have one tam from the milk into the spoon. And what do we have? We have another tam coming from the spoon into the water. What do you have? Not bar, not that data. Fine. Vachikach, chozru bishlaba, mayim pamacheres, which, Bapashi, look back at the original, looks like they even emptied out the water and put in new water. Okay. So just by the way now, the water's not banat tatera. What's with the pot? The pot is still parv? What do you say?
Yeah, it should be.
According to the Machaber. According to the Machaber, the water's parv. The water's of parv. Yeah? Okay. But talking about bakaf, now you cooked up a second time. So according to the Machaber, according to everything we learned, it's a parva pot. Now you put in fresh water. And you then we're talking about bakaf shel Bosor, and then you put in a fleshika spoon. So what do you have now? Again, you have not that data. Yeah. What should be the din? Don't read further. What should be the din, Rabbi say? Ben Yeme, clean. No shishim. What's the din? Parv. Let's say you didn't change the water. Let's say you put both spoons in at the same time. What would the Machaber say?
Well, that's the last halacha about the kalim.
Exactly. This is Sif Gimel. This is even better than Sif Gimel, right? The same thing. You got milchik and fleshik and kalim cooking together. Machaber holds not that data. The Ramah asks it, but the Machaber says it's okay. Here you did even better. Here you emptied out the water, and you put in fresh water. Talking about bakaf shel Bosor. Ushtei kapas hoyu b'nei Yemen. They're both ben Yemen. Ub'shum echad ma'apamim lahayu b'mayim shishim. And you don't have any bittul b'shishim. What does the Machaber say? Also l'shtamish b'kedera lei Bosor b'lei chalav. You can't use this kedera, not for Bosor, not for chalav. Make sense?
No.
No. Thank you. That's why you can't understand the sif without learning the klolim of not banat. Because otherwise, if you would have learned this in order, in Tzadik Dalit, and you say, okay, good, okay, fine. Yeah, it doesn't. I wouldn't do this in my house, right? So you're not at the Bosor. Yeah, but this doesn't fit in anything we learned about not. Why not? Like, what's going on over here? And this, if you look in the big Shulchan Aruch over there, if you're learning, there's a shach over here that's lying with the Golas. The shach goes through this whole parsha over here, and all the Mefarshim have a lot of problems with this Mechaber. A lot of problems over here. That's before we even get to the Ramah. Okay? With the Mechaber, what's the problem here? What's the problem over here? According to the Mechaber, could you drink the water? The Ramah answered the water. Those that Yera Chalevis that you wash the flesh kakelim and was both not that data. What did the Mechaber say? He said everything's mutter, and they were there even at the
I
same
thought the
time,
water
in
in
the
that
same water, in the same water. Okay, according to the Mechaber, you cooked up pasta in a flesh kapara ben yeme, and you put in a milchik a spoon of ben yeme in the pasta, and you stirred it up. Both are ben yeme, and there's no bittul b'shishim. Any problem with eating the pasta? That's the pasta. Not that tater. You made a mistake and you washed together the flesh and milk and kalim together. Okay, shouldn't have done it, but you did. Everything's mutter. Not that tater. That's what he said in the Tzaddik. Hey, Sif Gimel. Look, what happened over here? Here he's not only telling you that the water is asr. He's telling you can't even. And it was not even babasachas was zeh. And there he's telling you not only there was a problem, you can't use the kedera not for basar, not for chol. What in the world's going on over here? What happened? Just turned the whole world upside down. What happened to not parnat? Okay, so Mechaber says, okay, calm down. I'm not going to tell you the pat is treif. It's fort not parnat. Since it was new, since it was never cooked in before. Nobody ever cooked in it before, so therefore it's okay. And then Ramah comes in over here.
If it was 1 second, if it wasn't new, but it was parv, it wouldn't be the same halacha.
Parv is new. The same din. And zwischen uns gerät, if it would be Eine Ben Yeme, is also called new as far as this is concerned. It's happened with a new pat. But Pashtas, that's what comes out from the Reis HaKelim. They're telling you stories and it's creating something that it was not. That the pat was not a contributing factor over here. So Ramah comes along and says, "Me, Rabbi very good." So you learn Tzadik Dal before Tzadik Hey, and you say, "Okay." So the Ramah tells you it's not Barnat. Okay, very good. So along come the Nesakim. Okay, so now you have a picture of spoons going in. There's one spoon going in. Okay, picture first the fleshka spoon went in, then the milk spoon. So now kash. Number one, Hari Ladasa Mechaber Mutter not Banat. But Adachas Kalim I said even if you're doing it at the same time, it doesn't answer anything according to Mechaber. That's what we learn in Sif Gimel in the next Siman. Yeah. And plus the Shach asks another question. The Mikra Yesh Lahatir L'Chol This is even better. Ki Yesh Kan Gimel Nesentam. It's not Banat. Right? Because by the time you get to the Kedera, you got to know the nice and time because you put here's the milchig spoon, so it became milchig with the first nice and time. Then it went into the water, second nice and time. Then it went into the pot, the third nice and time. Okay, so the second question over here, the Taz is not shava b'shava. So if you remember the Alter Rebbe that I quoted you from Tufnun base over there in the Hagah, you say this like a Hagah. The Alter Rebbe says even those that answer 3 nice and times. Yeah. Okay, so this is where it comes from. Okay, so that's a machlek. That's the second question. But you see over here, there's a big problem. So here's the 3 tam. First, the taste, the kaf kibla tam b'abasa, then the kaf besoris paletas tam lamayim, and then mayim avira matam l'kater. Okay, mixed up the milk and fleishiks over here. Shame. The one that put the kaf also mixed up fleishiks. They have a right to mix it up on the PowerPoint. Yeah. Okay, so you have 3 knots over here. So what's the story? So the shach comes along and says he does not agree with this mechaber. This mechaber does not make sense with the klolim of not barnat, and therefore asir mutter. Elamai, what are you going to do with this pot? It's a private pot, and you can do whatever you want with it. I mean, for it, somebody put a milchika spoon, a fleshika spoon. So he says, listen, you're going to have to make it one or the other. It doesn't seem, there are people, this is, it really is part of this discussion, but I'm not going to discuss it now. But I teach kashrus in seminary through the years. I asked the students, I said, do you have private pots in your house? So half the class usually hands go up and the half the class goes down. So the people that have parv, they say, how can you run a kitchen without private pots? And the ones that don't have it say, how can you have a kitchen with private pots? Doesn't everything get mixed up? Whatever you get used to, that's the way it is. So the shach doesn't want to leave this parv, this pot. So whichever one was the last one to go in this case, it was first the milchika and then the fleshika spoon went in, so you make it a fleshika pot. Because and that's the case. It was a kedera chadosha. Okay, so he doesn't agree that it's that you can't use it for milchus or fleshiks. He holds it's mutter you can use it with milchus or fleshik. But lamaisa you should be keveya whatever was the last thing it was used with. And the taz, this is in daf acheren. You have here mentioned in the introduction that you have the shach and taz, and although the taz was older than the shach, but they nevertheless corresponded and they met each other, chabit each other. But Nekudas HaKesef writes often very sharply against the Taz. And then the Taz answered, and the Daf Acheren, I believe it's called, that he answered some of the comments of the Shach. And this is one of the ones that he wrote about. And the Taz has another take on this whole thing, that he says that it does fit into the klolim. How does it fit into the klolim? Because even the Mechaber holds that you're not allowed to be geir and napanat lechatchil. Yeah, the Mechaber agrees you can't do napanat lechatchil. So therefore, since this is a parva pat, it's a kedera chadosh. That's the whole point of Tassis. That's why the Mechaber quoted this, but you weren't sure whether it was a significant detail or not. He holds, yeah, significant detail. Why? Because if you're going to cook Bosor or cholav in it, you're being geir and napanat lechatchila. You want to rely that it's okay because not banat. So it is okay, it's not banat. You're just not allowed to do lachatchila. Even the Mechaber, who holds from not banat, even a bishul and sli. Okay, but he still holds you're not allowed to do lachatchila. Since it's a kedera chadosha, says the Taz. So if you're going to cook milk or meat in it, so then you're going to be getting not banat lachatchila, and that you're not allowed to do. That's the Taz in the Daf Achron. But kedera chadosha.
Can you wait?
Can you wait? So then you're going to use it for Bosor b'cholav. Then achshav kegerim napanat lechatchila. Because why? Because you have napanat. You want to say that you don't have to worry about the tam cholav that was absorbed in this pot from the milchik spoon, and you're going to cook meat in it. Why? Because you're going to rely on napanat. You're not allowed to rely on napanat lechatchila.
So
That's the reason for the din. So the Taz, in other words, the Shach does not understand the Mechaber, and he disagrees with the Mechaber. Al pi din, so the Taz brings in something else and says, yeah, can you understand it? It had nothing to do with the dinim of not betzim. It has to do with the inyan that even we forgot about this whole thing. The dogm shola b'kair is losh b'diavad. So this, it doesn't use a lashon shel b'diavad, but he says that's the soul, that's the neshama, the problem over here in the sif. That's
so 1 second. We're saying that what happened already was b'diavad, but now when you have to choose if it's going to be a fleshik or milchik pot, that's lechatchila.
Oh, it does. Exactly.
But technically, you can eat the pot itself with the kutach.
To eat the pot, I don't think.
I know. I'm saying the pot itself, you can eat with the kutach, right?
I know.
If it was a food.
Okay. You see, the Shach disagrees.
Can you wait to make it Einay bin Yoimai, the pot, and then choose what it is?
Yeah, it's a good question. See, even the not banat, yeah, whether in such a case a not banat would work or not, Einay bin Yoimai is a good question.
So now it reads totally different.
It just gets a little more complicated when you see the rest of the Ramah. We don't have the whole Ramah over here.
Now it makes sense why.
We're not out of the woods yet, Rabbi is saying. There's a whole other piece of Ramah here, but they're just, we're building things up one building block at a time.
So
Yeah.
now it makes sense why it's usher for Bosor B'chala, but it's still mutter for other things. So the
Exactly,
pot
because
is
then
not
you're not relying on not Bernat. Unless you want to say you're relying on not Bernat, the Mechaber is not worried about this part of the Ramah. The Ramah was worried that the timing are going to mix together. And just by the way, this is what we referred to. We learned this last week. Yeah. Right? That's what we quoted to show that the Mechaber holds that the main that Shishim would be sufficient. There was Shishim. Fine. Okay. Let me get back to it. We got a lot of ground to cover. Okay, so that was the review on what we needed, and that is, now there's a whole piece over here of Ramah, which we really need to learn, but I'm going to have to do it in the review, strangely enough, because it's in the rest of that Ramah. We knew when we learned. Okay, I'm going to leave it for later. It's a passion of itself. Let's learn today's share, and I'm just telling you that there's another piece of this Ramah that needs an explanation, and we will, Yimit Hashem, come back to it. Fine. Now, I told you that the Ramah brought down back over. We're going now. We finished with Tzadik Dalet for a moment, even though there's pieces of the Ramah, like I said, from that Sif that we have to come back to. But we're coming back to Tzaddik Hey for a moment. So let's just go back over here for that Ramah. So you see over here in the Ramah, so I didn't read it inside with you. This is the case of washing the dishes in the Milcha Kapat. Yeah, and he said, the Ramah said, we're talking about a Klirishin. Well, let's say it was a Klisheni. But if you did one after the other, which is just, by the way, exactly what happened over there in Simon Tzadik Dalet that we just learned. It was Zer Chazeh. It was even better than Zer Chazeh. That Zer Chazeh is using the same water. This is over there was Zer Chazeh with different water. Or it was a Klisheni. I feel a biyachad. Hakol shoy. Then it's okay. Even though normally we have many mafarshim that bring down. You learn in Simon Kufay and Taruvas that we're machman a Klisheni lechatchila. Let's just have said maruba. But in this case, since anyway, Machaber says the whole thing's okay anyway. So it's not going to be machmer, even those opinions that are normally machmer, a klisheni, they're not going to be machmer in such a case. What's with Iri Klirish? Okay, so now we have a new issue. What's with Iri Klirish? And listen closely, because all the questions that come up in a sink are basically a question of Iri Klirish. So this is a very, very common case. To make it even simpler, let's imagine you have a pot of spaghetti, and then you're going to pour out the liquid. You take a colander or something like that, and then you pour out the water in the sink. So you have mamish iri klirishin falling on top of your kalim inside the sink. So if you have milchik and fleshka kalim inside the sink or something like that, it's a real issue. So iri klirishin. So we have a machlekes. What's the status of iri klirishin? Is it yam mavashal? Is it not mavashal? So we are machmer to say it's mavashal, but it's only mavashal kadei klif. It's only going to be mavashal, but that's a chumrah. So over here, the Ramah, who was very often giving us all different sorts of chumras, he's not giving us chumras. He's quoting the Gedele Rishayna Ashkenaz. There's a veheter and the Maril and the Trumas Adeshin and so on. And he's giving them what are the Minhagim and Ashkenaz. So suddenly it comes Iri Klirishin. He's not so excited making chumras or Iri Klirishin over here. Vim Iri Miklirishin shel Bosor. Al Kli Cholav. He says if you're pouring directly from the Klirishin on top of the Kli Cholav, then I'll be machmer. Then a Klirishin. Then it's going to ask it. Okay. So the Ramah, who doesn't want not barnat, yeah, if there was bishul, yeah, and even over here, if the case that we're worried about, it's not going to be not barnat latera. So he's worried about this case also, because what happened over here? Let's say you had pasta that was cooking in a fleshka pot. So the pasta was not barnat latera. Yeah. Again, just to review, we talked about over there that you had kaira shel Bosor and you put it in a yerech halevis, and the Ramah answered it even b'diavad. Why? Because he's worried it's not barnat latera, because the taste of the Bosor is going to meet the taste of the chalev if there was no shishin. Okay, so now if you pour it from one keli for your kledish and shel Bosor, okay, and you pour it into a keli iri kledish, into the keli shel chalev, so what's going to happen? So the tam that's there in the let's say the pasta that was cooked in the keli shel Bosor, you poured it into a milchik keli, so it's mamish like washing it together. Also, the tam is going to come out of the ben yema taste is going to come out, and it's going to meet the taste that's in the pasta, and it's not banat latera anymore, says the Ramah, if you poured it directly. Why? Because you got tam basar that's floating around inside that pasta. And now you pour it with irik l'rishon with the mavashal kadei klifa. Yeah, this is not the cooler Ramah. This is the Ramah's machmer. If it's directly a klirishon like this, so then the Ramah's can be machmer. This is halachically equal to the case of washing the kelim together. We're equally concerned over here that the two taimim are going to meet. The tam chalav that's in the keli on the bottom is going to go into the pasta or whatever it was, and there's tam basar there they're going to meet, and it's not going to be natmanat datera. Aval im ira mayim roschim she'enim shel basar v'lei shel chalav. Yeah, al kelim shel basar v'shel chalav b'yachad, which is a very common case. You're pouring from a parva, hot water. Let's say you cook the pasta. It's a more common case. You didn't make two mistakes. Here you have to make two mistakes. Here you cook the pasta by mistake in a fleshka pot, and then you pour it, and there's milcha, pour it on top of milcha keli. Okay, but over here you're pouring from a parva pot. Let's say you cook the pasta in a parva pot, or you're emptying out of a hot chaynik. You're pouring out the water from Mitzvah Shabbos, what's left over from the percolator. Okay, and there's by mistake there's milchik and fleshik dishes in the sink. There's a milchik spoon that was put in the fleshik sink by mistake, and you pour hot water over it. That's also irik l'rishon. Okay, but here it's not the tam is irik l'rishon. Over there, the tam irik l'rishon, the taste is in the. It's right over there when the two of them meet. Over here, it's a different story because there's no tam in this water. It has the effect. Let's say you have a milchik spoon and a fleshka spoon that's sitting in the sink, and you pour hot parva water on top of it. Irik l'rishon, so it's mavashal kadei klipa. So who says it's going to be mavashal each other? It'll be mavashal kadei klipa the milchik spoon, and the same thing in the fleshka spoon. Who says it's going to mix the tam from one to another? So Ramah says no, to be so machmer with irik l'rishon, no. Avalim ira mayim reischem she'enim shel basar v'lei shel chalav. Al kelim shel basar v'shel chalav b'yachad. You pour it on top, so there's milchik and fleshik a kelim there, and you pour parva water on top of it. And then the Ramah goes further. V'afilu shum and davik b'hem. Even if there's grease on top of it. I mean, they're in the sink, yeah, they weren't washed yet, so they're dirty. So there's milchik schmutz on the milchik spoon, and there's fleshik schmutz on the fleshik spoon. Hakol shari. Everything's okay. Why? Why is it not mavashal kadei klipa? You have over there the schmutz. Why shouldn't take the fleshik, the schmutz, and cook it kadei klipa into the milchik schmutz and vice versa? And yabas b'cholav. Why not? So the Ramah now suddenly backs off this whole concept. The ain iri kaklidish mamish. It's not we treat it like a klirishon. So klirishon is mamish mavashal, and iri klirishon we say it's mavashal kadei klipa. So he says, okay, calm down. It's a machlekes, machmer. It's not mamish mavashal. You don't have to go so far. They need a conclusion mamish. Sheyase shakelem shemare aleim yivlum zem. that it should have its own keich, that it should get absorbed. That's one thing, but it's going to affect that these kalim that are innocently sitting over there in a cold sink should be giving time kedei klifa one to another. These places that I'm. Okay, so now we're going to have a whole discussion about this. Okay, so the Nesa Kalim tear this apart, especially the Shach, and start analyze what are all the possibilities and what is the reasoning behind this kula of the Ramah. And what's going to come out at the end is we're going to get some chumras out of this. There's one more line over here. I'll read it. We'll explain it after the break. There's something else also. Let's say you find a milchig bowl together with the fleishig bowls. There you have the drain board, the fleishig drain board, and then you see there's a milchig keli there. So do we have to worry that it was washed together with the fleishig by mistake? We don't have to worry that it was washed in such a way that it became aser. We don't have to worry about that. If you have a keli that you know that became aser, and it got mixed up with other kalim, so that's a din of taruvus. You have a treifa keli that mixed up with the kosher kalim, and that's a shaila bittul of kalim, and you say that you could do agol and all of them anyway. Anyway, that's hilchas taruvus. That's not for over here. Here he's saying that in order to make it aser in the first place, you have to make sure a few things happen. And who says that happened over here? Even if it was washed. Anyway, we'll soon see the Shach and Taz how they explain it. But now, okay, we're going to skip this. I was going to review over here again, but I'm going to skip that review. And we have Tzadik Dald. So that was the order that was originally over here. We learned all that already. Okay. So here, now we're going to go through the Ramah. First case of the Ramah is that you pour directly from the fleishik keli into the milchik keli. So here's the parva food that's going from there. So this parva food has some tam bosor in it, right? It's not banat, has not banat in it, and then it reaches the kli cholav. And what exactly are we worried about over here? And by the way, didn't the Ramah say you're allowed to put it in the keli of the opposite one? Remember, not banat. He said not banat. You cook the pasta in the fleishik keli. So you can't eat it with cheese. That you're not allowed to do, says the Ramah. But you're allowed to put it in a milchig bowl and eat it like that. He said you're allowed to put it in a bowl. And suddenly comes over here, and here we're putting it in the bowl, and here he's telling you're not allowed to do it. It's gonna ask the keli. So why is that? What exactly is the problem over here? What's going on over here? So Ramah is going to answer the keli, yeah. Hakeli achalav yosef, and what's the reason? There is a concept called nitzuk. Nitzuk, you have nitzuk and katafris. You have nitzuk when you pour from one thing to another. So there's a connection between the two. So it's beiked in Hilchas Tumah V'Tara. You have it, and the shaila is whether that translates over into dinim of kashrus. If you remember, we had the same discussion when we talked about zeya, that the zeya was coming from the machvas shel cholav, and it was going up into the keli shel bosor that was on top of it. And we have certain things that they learn out. The Rosh learns out from dinim of Tumah V'Tara. We had the case, if you remember, that by a woman, her hands were tamei and the pot was tar, and the steam came up and hit her hand. Talked about this different cases related to that. So the shaila over here was also, if there's the nitzuk creates a connection between the two, it's as if the two tastes are mixed together. If you say nitzuk, and that's the way some of the achreinim learn that Ramah ki yeshna chiba shel mayim ben akli atachton be'elyon. It's considered to be one unit since they're touching each other. But this veheter and others say no, everything's okay. We don't have to worry. There's no time is being mixed up over here, and just like it's okay to put into a keli of the other min, like we said before, that the pasta from the fleishik kapat you could eat in a milchik keli, you could pour it straight into the milchik keli. So too. So the shach, he's neitul lahakel, And he says even the Ramah in Teres Chattis, remember the Teres Chattis is also written by the Ramah, and there's a lot more Hezbollah because the Ramah, he only wrote the Hagois on the Shulchan Aruch, so the Dark Hamesh is more barichas than Tach. Teres Chattis is set up from the Seder Sharadura is even more barichas. It gives reasons, more explanations, and over there, even though over here the Ramah just says it's also, but over there he says it's okay, perhaps it's Baruba. So the Taz, the Shach wants to go along with that also. And everybody agrees. The holidays, a clear rishon ain't a nesser mekeach ha'iri. Shall a clear tacht. Nobody's going to answer this clear alien. He wants to answer the milcha kekeli on the bottom. But this, if you want to tell me nitzuk, it makes a connection. So why shouldn't we answer the keli on top also? If you want to compare it, then to I mean, when you want to make a nitzuk, so go all the way. You're not the keli alien. So then he says the holidays. It is interesting. Now the Rebbe brings down in Agolos Kalim, some Tofnon Aleph in Hilchos Pesach. So he brings down about the whole concept of kashering with iru. If you have a table and if you're worried that people spill soup on the table, chametz stick of soup, so it's iru klirishon. So kabbalah kach polte, it got the chametz stick with the iru klirishon. So you kasher it by pouring, leave it for 24 hours, ain't ben yemei, and then you pour boiling hot water over it. So then you kasher it also with iru. And the Alter Rebbe brings down there a chumrah that women have of not using the pot you use to kasher the table, not using that pot for Pesach food. What's what Pasha's the reason that you can't? This is the reason that since the Ramah has this concept of nitzuk, and even though he's not going to go so far as asring the kli basari, the one on top, but nevertheless, there is a svara to say such a thing, and the noshim sikoni is for machmer according to this day. The Alter Rebbe says, okay, it's their machmer, but if it happened, you can still eat the food on Pesach because liquor adin is not a problem. But nevertheless, there is such a chum. And also, this is only iri mamish. L'chol days and nifsak akiluach sheben akli rishon l'sheni. When if it wasn't a continuous pour, in other words, it was no longer connected to the klirishon. Iri klirishon, you're pouring from the klirishon, and it's still connected with the klirishon. If that breaks and there's no solid pillar of water, so to speak, that's connecting the keli on the bottom with the keli on the top, that's not called the real iri klirishon. That's why you have to be careful if you're kasher on iri klirishon. The Alter Rebbe brings down, you have to make sure we're nifsak akiluch. So, but if it's nifsak akiluch, chen lachshash lo teruvas time makeli mator. So then everything is okay. Fine. So now this is the case where the Ramah, you remember, was machmer. Then suddenly the Ramah said that's because it's coming from a fleshka keli. But if it's coming from a pava keli, and then you have different minim over here. So here we see this is I don't know. Let's say for argument's sake, it's a fleshka sink with a fleshka bowl, and here's a fleshka spoon, and there's a milchika knife. Let's say that's what happened. And here you're emptying out the hot water from a klirishon, and you're pouring on the top of these two kelim. So now what happens? So, as I told you many times, the correct answer to all halachic questions is it depends. So the shaila is, what does it depend on? So there's three possibilities. One possibility is kliya Bosor, kliya cholav, nekiyim. That both of them are clean. We're not worried about mamoshes. We're only worried about top. That's one possibility. Then there's another possibility, the opposite. Both of them are shmutzik. Kliya Bosor, kliya cholav, im she'eris eichel aleim. Both of them have leftover food on it. This milchika knife has some milk on it, and this fleshika spoon has some flesh on it. What's the other possibility? There's only other one possibility. One is clean and one's not. Yeah, one of them has leftover food, and the other one is clean. So the Ramah is matter everything. The Ramah doesn't go into this whole detail. The Ramah said even if they're both shmutzik, then it's still okay. So Ramah, he made himself very clear. For sure, if there's no mamoshes and it's clean kelim, then for sure you don't have to worry. Okay, but even if they're both shmutzik, you don't have to worry. So the Shach and Taz are not comfortable with this. Okay, you want to be a little bit more meko on a iroi, it's one thing, but mamoshes. I mean, if somebody had some cold chazer sitting on a plate and then they poured from a klirishin on top of it, you wouldn't say it's mavliya, that the taste, it's going to drive the taste of the chazer into the keli. Why not? Why not? Why? And if that's the case, why not what we worried about over there? Just because the flesh is sitting on the fleshka spoon. But if the two are sitting on top of each other, okay, punkt in this picture, there's water in the bowl, so it's underwater, maybe you won't have, it's also, it's like a klisheni. So that water in that bowl is a klisheni, you're going to pour hot water into it, that's not going to be a reklidishin. But if it's sitting in the open and you pour it without the liquid in, so then why in the world shouldn't it be mavliya? Anyway, so therefore we're going to break this into three different possibilities. And each one, it has its own din, its own machlekes, and its own explanation. We're going to go through these three, and then we will take a well-deserved break. Case number one. Kli habasa b'chol meluchluch. Both of them are dirty. So there are muscles, everything's okay. Why is everything okay? Okay.
He said
We had-
mamish meluchluch or just shuman?
Okay, how dirty is dirty? It's dirty. There's mamashas there. There's mamashas.
They're both covered in water?
No, they're not covered. That's a bad picture. It's not a bad picture. It's a very good picture. It's just not what we're talking about. Okay. You have a schmutzige fleischige spoon and a schmutzige milchige spoon. There's milk in this spoon and there's meat in the other spoon, and they're both sitting right on top of each other. And then you pour from a klirishin on top of both of them. So if you remember, when we were talking about not bar not, I know we're not talking about not bar not. Exactly. But we did have a concept we've discussed a few times about the difference between tam which is belua in a keli as opposed to tam which is belua in a food. Remember we had our fleshika potatoes and it went from one pot into the other one? From the fleshika pot into the parva together with the parva potatoes. Is that not banat? It's not a regular case of not banat. You have over there mamashas. So even though we have over here mamashas, but the earlier cases, it speaks over there about malikas haifas that used to use irreclaration in processing the chickens. Not relevant to what the reason was over there. So we're worried about being mavliya. And is it the same thing with a keli or not the same thing with a keli? So the keli, if you say that it's strong enough that the tam will go into food, that's not necessarily a proof that it's going to go into a keli. You're going to need more keich to get into a keli than to get into a food. So the Rama wants to say over here, this that we see the irreclaration and mavashal, and over here it's going to have to get it from one keli into the other keli. So mainly you want to tell me that it's sitting over there and there's flesh and the fleshika spoon and you pour from it irreclaration on top of it. So okay, so we're going to say the guy cooked the clip and they clip it's a benyam with a spoon. But now you got to get that taste over to the other spoon. It's not sitting on the other spoon. It's sitting on its own spoon. So, and somehow you're going to get the taste of both of them. In order to answer them, it's going to have to travel over to the other keli. Who says irreclaration has the keich to do that? But there are Moses. But the Shach and the Taz will say, no. And he brings a mashal, the Shach. We see from the mashal that we don't differentiate really between kelim and food. When we're talking about irreclaration has the power on a food. Irreclaration has power on a keli. We see that from the case I just quoted you from the Alter Rebbe and Ilchus Pesach. We're talking about the kashan with irreclaration on a keli. It's not a there's different levels. Maflit, bavad maflit and mavliya, bekeli. Maflit and mavliya, maflit means it's going to cause the taste to come out of the keli, and mavliya means it's going to cause that taste to be absorbed into another keli. Okay, to accomplish that is easier than saying mavashal. If you remember that all the way at the beginning of Pezayin, when we talked about Derech Bishul, Osir Teira, they have different ways. The Tam could go from one thing to another. Doesn't mean it's Bishul. The Hilchot Shabbos, this is something that's Bavashul. You know, you do something with a klisheni, it's klisheni and a Bavashul. Okay, if it's called a Bishul, it's Yamavashul. But otherwise we say not. So over here, the Shachan tells what's going on over here. It a Klirish, Bavashul. How's the Rambam being mekel over here? So if they're both Shmutzik, both the Tazn and Shachan. Or Machmer, excuse me. Now, second case is the opposite. We have Bosor v'chol in the key. Okay, now we're talking a different story over here. What's happening now over here? So the Ramah says that they're mutter, and the Shach over here basically agrees with the Ramah. But Pashtus, he agrees with the Ramah. Now, does he only agree with the Ramah? Have some Meruba not? Okay, you'll see it's steer in the review, but anyway, Pashtus, the Shach is making like with the Ramah. Why? Because first of all, okay, he also knows, he agrees with the Ramah that here a Klerishan, it's not mamish the same thing like a Klerishan, it's a machlekes. There's no machlekes whether a Klerishan is mavashal. That's the definition of bishul. It's machlekes whether it's a Klerishan mavashal. Okay, so we're machmer, but we're machmer. It's not that it's a chuli alma. So that's one thing. And they also yesham shenach shekanap or not. Whatever happened, not or not. So the mechaber was megal by not or not. Yeah. So the mechaber was megal. The Ramah was machmer. The Ramah said he knows that there's such an opinion. He's relying on the mechaber b'diavad. So he knows there's such a thing as not or not. So if the kalim are both clean, so what happens over here? Imagine you would take two clean kalim and you put them in a kledishin. What would be? That's Sif Gimel. That's the Mechaber Sif Gimel. That's the Kaidish of Bosor and the Yerech Alevis. So what happens? So the Mechaber says, okay. Why? Because not that data. Because the Yerech Alevis, the milk went into the pot went into the water, not data. The bowl, the fleshika bowl, so the taste went into the bowl, number one, and then the taste of the bowl went into the water, taste number two, not that data. So the Mechaber allows it. The two not data. Now the Ramah is worried that the tastes are going to mix inside. Okay, so the Ramah is Mechaber. But the Ramah, he knows it's a chumrah of the Ramah. He answers even b'diavad, fine. But he knows that there is a Mechaber, the whole difference. So he puts these two together. First of all, there's a machlekes about a Klerishan, and second, there's a machlekes about not panad under such a circumstance. So therefore, he says the kelim are okay. Pri Chodesh doesn't agree. Minchas Yankiv is mentioned them before, also back in Pezayin. Minchas Yankiv is a pirush on the Teres Chatas on the bottom of the Tach. Anyways, he wrote Shus Yankiv, Chayk Yankiv, many svarim he wrote. He's not the Yankiv and any Yankiv, but he wrote a Pirush on any Yankiv too. Anyway, they both hold Kelim Asurim. They don't like this stringing together the different coolers here. Irim Klerishan is mixes the taste together, and even if the two Kelim together, so then you got a problem. Okay, and that leads us to the problem of what's going on in your sink. Okay, even if the Kelim are clean. So what do you do with this machlekes? The Prima Godim says yesh lahachma lesar kelim. So therefore you should be machmer and aser kelim. Aval keshiyaf shalahagil nitim lismach al shach. But if it's the type of kelim that you can't kasher, let's say China, you can't do agalos kelim on China. Licheres you can't kasher. The Chumash says yishaver, you have to break it because the Rashi explains the taste never going to come out. Okay, so if this happened to a klicheres and you can't kasher it, so then you can rely on the opinion Shach and the Ramah. And now the complicated case was when one is dirty and one is clean. So here you see a nice clean milchika spoon, and then you have a nice dirty fleshika spoon. So let's think about what happens. You pour hot water over both. Let's take the fork as a neighbor to the spoon over there. You pour hot water. And the hot water hits both of them at the same time. Okay, so what's going to happen? Who's in worse shape over here? The fleshika spoon or the milchika spoon? The milchika, excuse me, the milchika fork. The milchika fork is in worse shape than the fleshika spoon. Why is that? Because there's mamoshes coming on the top of that fleishik, a spoon. So when you pour the hot water, all it has to do is cook that meat, mamoshes, into the milchik fork. And since Iri Klirishin has the power to be mavliya, kadei klifa, so therefore that milchik spoon now has a kadei klifa of fleishik taste. So that that fork you can't use. Only kadei klifa, okay, it's only kadei klifa. It's a b'chol. Can't use the milchik fork. Now shaila is, what's with this fleishik spoon? What do you have to worry with the fleishik spoon? So on the one hand, we could say like this. We could say, okay, Iri Klirishin has the power to take mamoshes and get it into the keli. Yeah, but does that have the same thing? At the same time, this fork is going to absorb the fleishik mamoshes, the taste of the mamoshes of the meat, into the milchik fork. So that Iri Klirishin is going to be mavashal kadei klifa and take out milchik taste from the fork and put it into the spoon. Who says? Maybe it doesn't have the keich to do that. On the other hand, but we could say like this. Maybe we could say, so you have water over here. This whole thing is fluid conditions, right? So now you have flesh, you have meat, which is on the surface of the milchik fork, right? And you're cooking in kadei klifa, so it became aser kadei klifa. So now what happened? The fork's aser kadei klifa. What's with that mamoshes that's on the surface of the fork? Those pieces of flesh, they're okay. You can eat them, you can't eat them. You can't eat them now either, because they also become aser kadei klifa. Not only that, they're chtichanas and nevela. The fork is chtichanas and nevela. Chtichanas and nevela. Oh, wait a second. Now we got an iser. You got an iser. Oh, there's no not by iser. We say not banat the teira. Now you got something which is also, who says we say not banat? Once it became Muslim, we got a problem. And those are the two tzadim over here. So what's the din of the clean keli? So it's also finished. Din keli melachlochem. Okay, so that we mentioned before that the keli melachlochem are a problem. What's the din with the fleishik keli? So on the one hand, we could say it's asur, on the other hand, we say it's mutter. So one side of it is nitin lahakol kekelim nakim. Why? It's going to be mafli to pull out the taste from the milchik fork, and then mimavliya it into the fleishka spoon. Who says it has such a keich to do that? It's a shaila of the iru. If you look at the keich of iri, maybe iri doesn't have such a keich to do that. But on the other hand, sad base. Why? It's chanan. You got food over there that now is sitting on the surface. So for sure, that went into we're answering the milk at the fork, yeah, because that cooked in kadei klifa. So who says the mamoshes was not chanan? So that's chanan. Ven kan not banat tatera. So there's no not banat tatera. You have chanan. So we got two sides of the coin, and therefore we are machlekes. Like the tzadrishin, the shachem matter only has a book. Okay, I think we have a long, well-deserved break over here. So
a sink is considered like a parv and klirishin, or like a fleishik klirishin?
Oh, you're running already to the next slide. The next slide. First, we're going to talk about sinks. I know that a lot of guys that get busy after the breaks and have to run away, but it's worth sticking around. I mean, I think it's worth sticking around, but over here, as far as practical cases, so we're going to talk about what happens in a sink, because it's not exactly what we've been learning. Okay, there's another dimension to this that that we have to look into, and then after that, we have to learn another sefer machaber, and then we'll be able to talk about dishwashers. And then we'll be able to talk about refrigerator. So there's a lot of ground to cover. So stay tuned. It's 8:22 p.m. Eastern time, 8:32 Mitzvah Shem will continue.